Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Radio. This is episode 95. I'm your host Peter Cimetti, and tonight my guest is VAUGHN Coleman. We're going to be having a conversation tonight about what his learning experiences have been making comics, and hopefully we have some time to talk UFOs. That's right, paranormal stuff. And why not? What a better day for it? Because I just found out today, that on Sunday, the 22nd, October 22nd, 9 o'clock Eastern. Don't miss it. Robert Clotworthy, the voice of Ancient Aliens, will be on the show. Comic Book Radio listeners, say yes. Bobo Ayami, hope you're doing well. We got Dr. Mask here in the house as well. Just Kevin Ryan, how's it going, Kevin? Hope you're doing well. Grape Nuka-Cola, what's up, Grape Nuka-Cola? Hope you're doing good. Randy Scribner in the chat tonight, along with Buddha Bear. What's up, Buddha Bear? Spaceman coming down from above. How's it going? Arthur Brown is here, too. What's up, Arthur Brown? Good to see ya. Frederick is in the house as well. Shrek, what's up? How you doing, buddy? Hope you're doing good. Phantasmagorical is here as well. Aw, that's kind. The host with the most. Thank you. Without further ado, let's bring him on. The man of the hour, Mr. VAUGHN Coleman.
How's it going? Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man, no problem. Glad to have you on. Glad you could be here.
Oh, yeah, me too. I like the background music. It's good.
Yeah, just like a chill vibe.
Mm-hmm. I like
it. Yeah. We'll be talking comics tonight. And like I said, if we have time, and we will make time, we're talking UFOs and things like that. It'll be fun.
I'm excited to. I love. I keep forgetting to get that. What is that like UFO poster? I want to believe that they put in every conspiracy theorist's house in any movie. I keep forgetting to get that. But I do have an aliens poster, so that's something.
Yeah, you got to get an X-Files poster, right? That's like the quintessential starter pack.
I need to watch that show. I've only seen two episodes. I liked it, but then I just never continued.
Interesting.
I know I'll like it. It's right up my alley. I mean, I love Close Encounters, Fire in the Sky, but maybe if we should save that for later.
Ooh, yeah. You may think you like X-Files, right? Because I was like you. I thought that I saw a handful of episodes over the years, and then I went into it committed. And it started to really get grating.
Oh, why is that?
Only because of the character of Scully. She drove me nuts. She would constantly go through a ton of things and just over and over again be the dismissive skeptic. I get her being more skeptical. I'm all for healthy skepticism and wanting to figure out what it is before jumping to a conclusion. But she would jump to conclusions in the opposite way.
Right.
And Mulder would be like, well, let's just check it out. Let's just investigate it before we decide this is definitively what it must be. And it would make more sense if she was in on it and she was a complete foil for him and he didn't know it. Like she was supposed to set him up and always constantly give him a hard time and sabotage these investigations. But yeah, it's not bad though. And I've heard that I should pick it up again. I left it at a point where a lot of people say, yeah, that starts to happen, but then it gets good again at a certain point. I got to pick it up.
Does she not, because I assumed she was skeptical in the first couple episodes, but I assumed that would change over, 10 seasons.
And it's like it kind of does change, and so many things happen, and it gets really great, and then all of a sudden it feels like she's got the memory of a goldfish, where it's like, how do you not remember that you were just abducted, and that these awful things happen, and that, this dude that can go through a grate and get all weird and slimy and change his body. You've seen so many things. You've seen government cover-ups all over the place, and yet, meanwhile, you're so dismissive. Man. So, yeah, that part of it gets a little annoying, but I got to pick it up again because everyone's like, yeah, X-Files is awesome, And I've heard I got to pick it up, so I will.
Yeah, I'm absolutely looking forward to I definitely would love to pick it up. I mean, I'm big into obviously all that stuff, and I'm big into comic books. I don't know if I've read a lot of, because there's obviously a lot of aliens in comic books, but often I find, maybe it's because I read too much superhero stuff, but that it's not as much like the unknown, because they'll go in the opposite direction where like I guess this is a product of having, a universe that's been around for so long, is that you can't have anything remain unexplored. You have to go through everything, and often what that leads to, I mean, even outside of aliens, you look at things like Wolverine's past. It's like, okay, did we need to know, every detail of his life?
Yeah, it ruined the mystique
like,
of the character.
Because I read Weapon X, and not that long ago, and
it's the exact one that I have.
Yeah, I got this one at a con that was like, it was really cheap, and I was like, I wanted to read it anyway, so picked that up, and like Hulk the End I got for like $1 each, which is a steal. Yeah, because you ever see like those trades where you could just tell they just want to get rid of it, and obviously their trash, my treasure, so
Yeah.
But I mean, this is great, but what I liked about it was like Wolverine is like a side character almost, like he's almost like the antagonist.
Yeah. That's Barry Windsor Smith too. Great stuff.
Yeah,
love his work.
Oh yeah.
You got everybody talking about X-Files in the chat now. We'll get to that later.
Oh yeah, we will. Sorry, back on track.
But
Stay on target.
So for you with comics, what was your start? How'd you get going in that?
Right. Oh, hold on. I brought it to New York Comic Con, but then I wasn't able to get it signed. But the whole creative team was, I don't know about the letterer or the editor, but the whole creative team, if I wasn't working the con, I would have gotten to sign it. Was at New York Comic Con. That's Batman Hush. This is the first comic I've ever read. I read it because I had gotten into superheroes through other mediums. So like I grew up Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Probably still one of my favorite movies ever. I mean, I love Spider-Man 2 as well. Spider-Man 3 I saw in the movie theater, and I know people have mixed thoughts on it, but it always will hold a special place in my heart. Rewatching it, I think it's really good up until a certain point where it just kind of nosedives in quality. But I would say like that, I would get into Batman like through the movies, and then want to learn more through the video games, and like even things like Lego sets or whatever, and I learned more and more characters, and I was like, well, I want to know where they come from. And then the animated series, of course, and finally, after playing Batman Arkham City and watching the animated series, I was like, let's dive further, like where does all this come from? And so I'd look up like, what are the best Batman stories? And Hush was one that came up. Like the art was immediately striking to me, the fact that it had all these villains in it. So I picked that up, and my comic book addiction began. So like then I went to Long Halloween and Year One, and I kept going from there. And then I think what really, because I dip in and out of comics, I think what really got me into like
Vaughn, one second, Vaughn. Don't get too far away from the mic.
Sorry. No, that's a good thing. Thanks for telling me that. So I think what really like made me dive fully in was, I don't even know why. At some point I just decided, what, I feel like reading some X-Men. And then I was recommended to read start with Giant Size and read Chris Claremont's run. I think that's what, like, diving into a run so long and it holding my interest and constantly refreshing, is I was like, okay, this is an amazing... I was going to film school at the time, but I was like, the fact that this is almost like a canvas, and yeah, it doesn't make as much money, but you were able to get so many ideas going on a much cheaper budget. Say, because you could... I always was a big, visionary guy. I'd have these action movie ideas, and then I'm like raising budget. I'm like, oh my God, this is just a scene in a house, and this is like $3,000.
Yeah, for a film, right? Yeah. Well, on a comic, it's like, well, what's your skill set? What's your imagination?
Right.
And then on a film, it's like, wait, every single thing has to be a real thing we put in there, or we have to pay for CGI to make that happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know how you feel about CGI effects and things like that. I think the less, the better.
I agree.
But, yeah.
I mean, you look at even older movies, oftentimes when they say the effects are dated, they're talking about CGI. You look at movies where it's like, generally, if there's a mix between practical effects and CGI, the ones that will age poorly will be the CGI, not the practical. Like, The Thing still looks great.
Oh, yeah.
Alien and Aliens still look great. movies that overly relied on CG. Although, to be fair, there are exceptions. Like T2 still looks great, but T2 is, even though it was revolutionary for CGI, the vast majority of the effects are, practical.
they're there. Even like Jurassic Park as well.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, where they're using it sparingly and in the right spots.
Yeah,
Not just to recreate an entire environment constantly or put a whole character there, and I think the acting suffers for it too, because they don't get a chance to really react properly.
I mean, look at Alien. You had the scene where it pops out and it hit. I was actually talking to her at a Monster Mania Con. What's her name? The woman who plays, it's Veronica Cartwright. She when the blood splattered on her face, that was like her authentic reaction, because it wasn't supposed to do that. You don't get that with CGI. You don't get that just kind of spur of the moment. And that is one of the things I think, especially you have to kind of learn as a creator, is letting the spur of the moment happen, because you get so caught up in your vision.
You can torture it.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with the drawing. Yeah, really hampering it down and losing the life out of it.
Yeah, even sometimes I'm like, is that really what I want for my artist? And I'm like, you know what? It's better than what I want, actually. It's fine. It's more than fine. And sometimes you do have to go, but sometimes you want to keep the vision. And so that's one of the things I think when it came to creating. There's so many things you learn. Printing costs. I mean, publishing, you learn how much work that is. Because everyone talks about self-publishing, and I go, yeah, I don't need a publisher. And it's easy to say until you're looking at it, and you're like, man, this is like half the work. This is like more than half the work. Just getting it out there, a marketing branch. And you're right, anyone can technically self-publish, but it's making sure you have that work ethic, I think. But even things like,
there's a lot to learn, and you got to really focus in on it. Yeah,
and even things like because you only really, unless you look for it, see the completed art, right? You don't see pencils, then inks, or roughs, then pencils, then inks, and colors, and character design, and every stage of the process until you're orchestrating it all. And it's really cool seeing it come to life, and it just shows how much work goes into everything.
So what are you doing within the realm of your comic creation?
So I am the writer, publisher of my new comic book, Living Legends. So this is an idea I had since I was a little kid. I had come up with it when I was in second grade, I think. I would just keep coming up with my own superhero ideas and writing out. They were like movie plots. It was like, this is the villain in the first movie, this is the villain in the second, this is the villain in the third, and he'd have like side characters. And then I shelved it for years, and I almost combined it with a bunch of other ideas I had from different projects, as well as I kind of got better as a storyteller, and I had read more and more comics, and I decided, what, let's dust this off. Let's make something of it. And I decided ultimately that I'm gonna, at this point, if it becomes a movie or an animated series, great. But I'm so into the comic book stuff that it's like, if it happens, it happens. But you have to be just like diving straight into. You don't want to write something that comes across like a Netflix pitch, right? I mean, we've all read those. And
I've
diving
read a lot.
into it, yeah. And I don't write like that. I found that. Actually, because I come from a screenwriting background, that as my brain kind of had to shift. I think one moment that really solidified the differences in the medium is there was a scene in my film script where someone puts something in a box and puts it under the table. And as I'm converting it to a comic book, I'm like, wait a minute, so how many panels is that? That could be a whole page. Open, lid, put it in, close it, do I do that, or do I just... And I was like, wow, and something that little really changed. I'm like, okay. And I would start taking things. I think one of the ones I pull from the most is Frank Miller. I mean, he's a master of page layouts.
You got to be able to consolidate your storytelling in the aspect of a comic, to compress it. We see way too much decompressed storytelling. So kind of like what you were just talking about, a whole page of you take a box and you put under the table. That should not happen in a comic, according to me anyway.
Yeah.
I don't have any authority over that, of course, but personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of readers, too, would appreciate the real estate of the page being used in a more exciting and pertinent way, where you can actually just have someone show it in a dynamic way as well, holding the box, whatever it may be, and then just right under the table,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing.
And
Or
that, I
even
guess-
don't even put them under the table. Have it later on be discovered by someone else and it's under the table, whatever the situation may call for.
And that scene's gone now because I was kind of like, why is this even here? But the point is that was something that really changed the way I looked at things. And when it came to this, I ideally want to run this series, and I'd love to make other ones too. I've reached out to people. I want to write for hire as well and edit for hire. And I've gotten a few people already reach out to me. I'm not sure what I could talk about. But, I want to have this series ongoing and then write basically as many as I can and get as many of my ideas as I can out there. And I always like doing YouTube, so it just kind of seemed like a natural fit.
The Living Legends book that you're working on, though, what's that about?
So that is set 20 years after World War III. It follows this teenage boy who was he's the son of a war veteran who grew up loving the superheroes that fought in the war. And so one day he's struck by lightning while holding this mysterious crystal, and he gets superpowers. And so he has electricity superpowers and can convert that electricity into his body to run at super speed. And so he finds himself, he's like, oh my God, this is everything I've ever wanted. I want to be a superhero. And despite everyone advising him otherwise, he tries to interfere with the heist at a nuclear reactor, but finds himself fighting a villain way out of his league. And this is just, I wanted to give a solid origin story to my main character before I build it off into a team book, which is what I want it to turn into. I want it to be kind of like a mix of Uncanny X-Men meets, Stan Lee's Spider-Man, or a bit of New Teen Titans. I mean, I pull from a lot of stuff too, even some anime. It's just whatever I can, but I want this to be a long, ongoing series, but I felt that, okay, if the first issue isn't something really solid, a world can only mean so much if you don't have a good character to explore it with,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you have too, read stories where they put all their time into the world building and the plot lines, and it's like, okay, great. What was the main character's name again?
Yep. Building up so much of the setting and the environment and the mood, and it's you never really get to know anybody though.
Right.
So you're kind of sitting there going, well, why am I here again?
Yeah.
Because that's who you're following along. That's where the emotion comes from, is from the characters. Everything else is adding to whatever it is that they're going to go through. So yeah, you got to really make sure you're building up those characters and then fleshing them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. And so that was my whole thing. And the World War III thing, I remember it was like a friend who didn't even really care about superheroes. He goes, Vaughn, why don't you do something different with your world? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, how many other superheroes are there? And I'm like, huh. And so I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, and I really, I kind of liked the idea of legacy. And I like the idea of, because I grew up in a world where superheroes are a thing in the fictional realm. And it's like, well, having someone be there where it's like they're almost like the next generation, and they're taking the ideals of everything that I love. Because what I did was I kind of boiled down, okay, why do I love superheroes? Of course, there's the cool action, right? There's the cool inventive ideas. But I was like, well, I like the idealism. I like the idea that they're these... I like that they have unique superpowers and bright costumes and all of that. I like what they represent. I like that they're the best of humanity. And in an age where I feel like often that's being deconstructed, I wanted to reconstruct it and say, because I felt that these characters, I don't care how corny it sounds, really, there are times even when I would be standing up to bullies and I'm like, what would Batman do? Would he take this? I don't think so.
No, he'd bring him to the rooftop and hold him over by a leg.
No, I didn't do that. Maybe if it worked out a bit more and kind of let loose on morals a bit. But the point is, I think that there's something so valuable about that stuff that I think we need. As corny
Yeah,
as it
it's
sounds.
it's cathartic to see wrongs get righted,
Yeah.
because you don't often see that
No.
in the real world.
And
And I think the more that we stray from that within fictional storytelling that's supposed to be in that aspect, because of course there's fictional storytelling where that's not the point, but the more that we lose touch with that kind of stuff, I think the more it reflects within society itself, because we start to lose the ability to even contemplate. Is that a possibility that wrongs can be righted?
Yeah, I think it's a big problem too, where people get so cynical. Like I see so many people, even with the boys, like, "Ha, this is what superheroes would be like in real life." It's like don't think any of them would be good people? None of them, really? What about all the people that like run into burning buildings with immense personal sacrifice? What about like you see so many acts of, even in small ways, heroism. Doesn't even have to be that. But
Yeah.
I'm supposed to believe that everyone is this awful person because what? Because a bunch of people that like are cynics are running. It's like I think that there should be villains for that reason, or complex characters. I'm all for that. I love complex characters. But I don't think we should sit here and say, that's all there is, or that everything is just terrible all the time. Like, what a depressing message. It's going to lead to a depressed population. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have. I like my sad stories sometimes, but I generally like even something bittersweet. Something like there has to be something to carry on. Like even the Green Mile has like uplifting stuff, as devastating as that movie is. And I think it needs that. Or even a story with a heartbreaking ending. I generally like when there's something to take away, not just, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be said for the variety of stories that need to be told, but within that variety, it's important not to lose an aspect of it, which is, I think we see a lot of that nowadays, where for something to be diverse, it means one thing needs to be taken out. For something to be a story that's appropriate or good, it needs to live up to what someone else's expectations of what that means. People looking for perfect people as opposed to good people is a big difference. And that lack of understanding that everyone's complex, people change over time, and that things even just take time. They take time. That's being lost upon us as we have a lot of instant gratification in the world. Everything happens so fast. We're rushing towards everything, and yet the biggest thing we don't have patience for most of the time is ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's something, a balance too, because as I live stream, it's like even though it's like hours on end, I find like even if I do a video essay or something like that, or something edited, that, takes less time and I don't get the instant gratification. And even less so when making a comic book. I mean, I've been working on this for what I thought it would take not that long. And then I'm like, okay, I got to do this. Oh my God. And I'm going through my list of like I was
How long did you think it would take?
I thought I could get it done within a year.
Okay.
And maybe, but setting up a company is everything. And I think I'll be able to get them as I get used to the process. But I'm learning everything in real time. And I'm so glad I did a bunch of rewrites, even though I'm never doing that many on one script again, I don't think.
You say that now.
Yeah, we'll see. I drove myself a little insane, but here's the thing. I became a much better writer. Like, I'm so glad I did, because the World War III stuff was not in my first several drafts, and now that's, like, something that hooks people immediately. So much of what I had, I'd be like, why is there 10 pages of them arguing in a school cafeteria? Thank God I removed that. There's... And so definitely there's something to be said for rewrites, but I even found, as I was just writing them through without revising the other issues, which I'll sure have to do, I got better with everything I wrote, because as you get a better feel for the characters and the pacing, it almost like, I don't want to say it writes itself, because that's a disservice to the writing, but let's put it this way. You could tell Chris Claremont probably had an easier time writing some of those later issues, in a sense, because it's like, okay, this is what this character would do, this is what this character would do. Everything's in motion. Let's keep it going. But it's really getting things started that I think is always the tough part of any new project.
Yeah. I got a secret for you, Vaughn.
All right, let's hear it.
I don't think it ever gets easier. In fact, I think it gets tougher.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is this. So you point out Claremont's run on X-Men.
Right.
Now, certain aspects get easier, but then other aspects get a lot more difficult. So the longer a series goes on, even though you've got your characters developed and they're in place and you can do all of that, it gets more and more difficult to come up with plots and to come up with things that will not feel like they're just regurgitated of what already had happened before. So it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier, where they seem to almost run out of runway.
Oh, yeah.
And then they go into the realm of storytelling in which they really should just leave that alone, but it gets harder. It gets difficult. And but there's a challenge to that, and there's an opportunity to be creative with that challenge. So hopefully, as that happens, and hopefully you're around long enough to continue doing stories like that,
so.
that you'll get to have those days where you're like, man, I think I did that plot already.
Well, that's good. At least I'll have done it, because I wrote. Everything took way longer than I thought. Like, I had my first 8 issues written. It was 11, and then I made my first one I was like, let's make it a big issue. Let's make it a 64-page issue. And then my last one, I was like, I'll make that. Almost like, Daredevil 181, like those double sized. I was like, let's end it on that. But that was always just like the first arc of the first arc in a way, where it was like, I have a 50 or so issue plan, and then more after that. So I have enough ideas, but obviously when I'm writing them out, I might find some of it's redundant later. Or, fingers crossed, new ideas. So we'll see. But,
yeah. Well, that's the fun thing, is that you will get new ideas that come along. But we're lucky. I guess you could say lucky. We're in a situation where we have a lot to work with and be inspired by. But the double-edged sword to that also is the fact that you don't want to start copying all the things you're inspired by.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, but we're also lucky too, where most of us are not following a monthly grind. Or getting 2 issues out or something like that a month away. A lot of the older comics, when they used to come out every 2 weeks, you can really run up against a wall in terms of that stuff. But yeah, there's so many different ways to tell your stories, and these are problems of course, these bridges that you'll cross when you'll get there. But I never look at it and go, man, it feels like that was easier at that point in time. It always seems like, wow, it's either it's bad and it felt like they just were like, we're up against the deadline. We got to put a story out. It's not going to be the best one, but it's going to be a story. And then eventually sometimes that stuff works around, and then you put out some of those bad ones, or at least ones that weren't as good, and it gives birth to some really great ones. And you see it happen all the time, that ebb and flow with creativity.
Right. There are some stinker storylines even in great runs, but then you can do something with it that is really special.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're crafting your characters for this, first and foremost, what are you looking to achieve with these characters?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I often will write out full things. What I'm trying to achieve is, I want them to... I really want people to get down to the core, and so often I will boil them down to their base elements. And I think superpowers, cool. Giving them characters, cool. But, what do they stand for? How do they play off of each other in dialogue? And so what I'll kind of do is I'll be like, all right, what does this person bring to the team or bring to the series? Why are they relevant? Who are they? What's something they would say in X situation? Where are they going? Giving a character direction, I feel, is one of the most important things you could do. Even if a character might get killed off, okay, what were their life plans going to be if they kept going? Will almost help. And not to fall into that cliche where I'm sure you've seen war movies where they'll be like, I have a family back home. It's like, why is this person suddenly saying this? Oh, okay, because they're about to die. I'm not saying that, but, I like to, even down to the main character had friends in high school. I spent probably way too much time, but I might bring them back later. So I always I'd rather put more than less. Going, okay, what is each character's personality like? When did the friends meet? Which friends have known each other the longest in the group? What's their group dynamic? Who's closest? What do they all want to be when they grow up? If they're alive for another how many years in the story, what are their professions? Will they be linked back? Who's a tech genius? Maybe they'll help out with the team. I always try and give them a trajectory to follow, give them values, give them interests, and make sure that they're entertaining too. You know, I try and how do they play off of the characters, and how does that further the story? How does that further all the other characters? And what do they contribute? You know, if a character's there, what's the reasoning for them being there? I think.
Yeah.
Is where it all comes
Conversely, how are you constructing your villains?
Villains. Okay, so villains, it depends. Like this one I came up with my main one for this issue, I'll say, is Dark Cloud, right? And I think if I were to imagine second grade, it was probably, well, he has lightning, Cloud. That's probably what my second grade mind thought. But I was like, and there were some ideas. I was like, that's kind of derivative and stupid. And I was like, wait, hold on. There might be something here. And I'd kind of just, I don't necessarily like to trash things, because even the bad ideas, I get to look up and be like, oh, that's cute. But you know, I want to keep that. I want to keep that childish. At that one point, I almost threw too much of that out, and I was like, reread that draft, and I was like, man, this is depressing. My second grade self would hate this, and so you find that merger. But with the villains, sorry, that was a tangent. With the villains, I wanted to make a guy who was what the main character needed at that moment. And what I mean by that is, okay, why am I starting the arc off with this one? Okay, he was the first villain I came up with when I was in second grade. And I was like, well, maybe I'll use a different one. I was like, well, no. Because in a way, he kind of I can make him represent everything that the main character is against. So he's a guy that, without, you know, spoiling everything, because one of my favorite issues I wrote is the one where I reveal his past, but he's someone who's been through all kinds of stuff. He's done service in the good of others, and he's felt that it's resulted in nothing but being stabbed in the back. And so this is a villain that has a very cynical outlook on the world. He's much more weathered and experienced, and who thinks that, no, these criminal acts that are more self-serving is just the way of the world. And that is fundamentally opposed to my main character, who's this young kid who's full of energy, but not weathered, not trained, not military, not anything like that. And so what they have is a clash, because in a way, the kid is not 100% right. He's a 15-year-old kid. You know, he's stupid. You give a 15-year-old kid powers, they're going to be really stupid and do stupid things. Even if he's an idealist and his heart is in the right place, that's not enough. Whereas this villain, his heart is so weathered that he almost is like not fighting for the ideals. And the truth, I find, is somewhere in the middle. The ideal is somewhere in the middle. But I wanted him to almost be a villain that challenges what the hero is fighting for and who he is, and reaffirms it in the end through the hero's journey. So I guess in the sense, because it's an origin story, the villain needed to conflict with the main character to reaffirm what they stand for, challenge them, so that way they could find what they stand for and who they really are. So that's what I like to do with my villains. That's why I like a villain like the Joker, even as simple as a character that is, because he's so evil. It makes a perfect foil for Batman, right? Because Batman is so good, and it's like, how far does he have to take it? And that's what there's something to be said about
the Joker is a constant moral test for Batman.
Yeah, and I like villains like that. Or even, you know, I looked at Batman villains. I really spent a lot of time looking at what I like and asking myself, why does it work? Like, why is Reverse Flash so terrifying? I think he's one of the most terrifying villains ever. Well, the Riddler, why do I love the Riddler so much? Well, I like him because he's an intellectual threat to Batman. You know, and I like the Batman. I looked at Batman's villains especially, and I was like, okay, Scarecrow is like another guy who embodies fear, and Batman is supposed to be the king of fear, and so that seeing that dynamic is great. You know, Two-Face, I think Two-Face is at his best when he is a former friend of Batman or Bruce Wayne.
So he plays upon the emotions.
Yeah. And I looked at all these villains and I said, well, why do they work? And not even just super villains. You know, I look at like Darth Vader. I look at I'm trying to think what are some others. I mean, there's so many. Even, all right, I don't know if I pulled from this character, but even like the Warden from Shawshank, what like is a great villain. You know, I pull from like what makes a great antagonist, and they have to further the protagonist.
Oh yeah, they're constantly in the way of what the protagonist wants to achieve.
Yeah,
but that's necessarily is not really their goal. You know,
Right.
sometimes it is, but it gets old fast.
Yeah.
It's more like it's strange because it's more like the antagonist wants to accomplish things, and the protagonist sometimes is just the thing in the way of the
Yeah.
antagonist from achieving what they want. So it's funny how that can often play out.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways to bring characters in conflict, and I think the best way to do it is to inherently have the characters at their core, even without the main goals, be conflicting with one another.
Absolutely. Man, oh man. Well, it seems like you're well on your way.
I
In
hope so.
terms of the nitty gritty, because you've got a lot that you've been learning.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest obstacles that you faced in terms of becoming essentially? I mean, is it okay to call you a self-publisher? That's correct.
Yeah, especially when I publish. So for now, I'm gonna say a self-publisher in progress, like a progress bar loading. We'll say that. But yeah, self-publisher. I'd say restricting. fi- I have so many grand aspirations, and one of my ideas is going, okay, we gotta kind of, if I help myself out first, then I could start helping publish with other people. And I'm still gonna help publish with other people, 100%. But it's kind of finding a way to kind of go, no, 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 you're not Marvel. You don't have everything. Get it down so that way you can grow. Being overly ambitious is a thing. I'd say looking into how much goes into publishing. It's not just write the book, pay the artists. That's it. It's not just the creative stuff. I mean, marketing, making sure you can make the best book ever, and if no one knows it exists, you know,
Then it
marketing
basically doesn't.
yeah, exactly. Marketing the book, selling the book, printing
Yeah.
the book, distributing the book. How many copies? Am I doing variant covers? What's the even like print sizes? All these little things, and I'm like, oh, now I know why editors and people like that exist.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a very big difference between even when people are starting off and they look at something and go, oh, print cost is whatever the print run was divided by the amount of books. Sure, but that's not production cost. Production cost is whatever else is going into the making of the book. So the
Right.
creative team, sometimes publishers will include the marketing cost into that as well. Anything that is, it's the same thing like when you're making film. We were talking
Right.
about like budgeting and things like that before.
Oh, yeah.
If the budget of the film was literally just the physical film used or the DVDs made or Blu-rays or whatever it is, that
Be
wouldn't
tiny.
even be close to how
Yeah.
much it actually takes to make that
No,
movie.
100%.
Yeah, so the same thing happens with comics. Your print run might cost $2 a unit, but your production cost, in terms of your talent and everything else involved and all of that put in there, and your own time, might be $10, $12, $15 a unit. And it's something that a lot of the time comic creators aren't really thinking about it that way.
Yeah, I had to learn that early, especially as making my budget, which is good. One of the good things about self-publishing is it does make me think about a lot of things that you get. A lot of these industry pros, when eventually, as always happens, they eventually decide, you know what, we don't need to pay your rates anymore. We'll bring in some new guy who will do it for
Yeah,
whatever. And so when that happens, it's like they haven't learned any of this. And so I'm glad in a way that I'm doing it young, and I'm by no means an expert. But I am learning, important things, and failure is going to be a good teacher. I'm hoping to do as little of that as I can. But it's learning the printing costs and everything. After production costs, printing costs don't look that terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not a compliment to printing costs. That's an insult to production costs. But and I'm like, okay, so I have to get this many, which means it's always like, I gotta do this, which means I gotta do this, which means I gotta do this, which leads me back to this, which means I gotta, and it's just a circle of constant work, but it's good work. And I mean, clearly I'm someone with no published work. Clearly some people, I don't know, they're like, and honestly, every time someone signs up for my book or even just invites me on or anything, it really is an honor, because it's like there's so many, even just in the crowdfunded community, there's so many books out there and so many names out there, especially
Oh, yeah.
ones that are more well known and more well experienced or can actually draw. I can't, But the thing is that what's good is I could pay someone to draw my ideas and make me look good. So that's
Well,
I guess all that
that's an
matters.
important thing, though, is to know what you're good at or what you enjoy
Yeah.
doing, and that you want to focus on being good at when it comes to the creative part as well. You know, it's good to kind of know a little bit of everything so you can communicate in a proper way instead of being like, it just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
You know, and you
yeah.
don't know what to tell the artist or anything, or what, if that's even a possibility on how to tell the story the way you want it to be told visually. But yeah, it's always good to know what your shortcomings are and what
Yeah.
your strengths are, and try to play up to your strengths as much as possible. Maybe, you know, work on some of the shortcomings here or there if you find that that's an endeavor worth pursuing. But when you can't and you don't want to do that, hey, pay someone who knows how to do it well.
Yeah. I 100%. There's always going to be you know I can't be a master of all trades, right? Let alone jack of all trades. But you know I try and do what I can, and what I like is when there's so many aspects that go into a comic book to learn, or just the creation in general. And I think, honestly, going in as an editor helped. And I think there's so many things that influence me. Even I'd watch so many video essays or critiques of movies or all kinds of stuff. And I think that kind of wired my critical brain to think about storytelling. Like hearing people talk about why something, if I don't like a movie at the theater, or if I do, conversely, or whatever, hearing people talk about it kind of reinforces an understanding of storytelling. And I think I bring that in when I edit projects. I think being a writer helps me edit, and being an editor helps me write. You know, I wouldn't hire an editor that I don't want advice from. I just would never do that. If I don't value someone's opinion, you know, why would I pay them for their opinion, essentially? And so I think because of that, you know, when it comes to my own books or whatever, this is also making me a better editor. In terms of now I'm understanding things in a more in and out kind of way. But I think that definitely helped the ego to say, yeah, I edited for people like Chuck Dixon, so that definitely helps.
What did you edit of Chuck Dixon's?
Hunter Ninja Bear. That was my first ever work in comic books, actually. Let me find it. Never met him. I'd still love to. Where is... I normally have it so I could just show it off and reinforce my ego. But you know what it was? The cleaning ladies came, and I didn't have time to put my comics away, so I just kind of threw them on a shelf somewhere. So
I hate when that happens. They do it to me all the time.
Yeah, so they're somewhere. But yeah, Hunter Ninja Bear was my first ever published work. No, that's Crisis on Infinite Earths. Okay, never mind.
And when you say edit, what did you do as an editor?
So that one, my role was not as... I think I was initially... I don't know. But my role was more so... Most of the book, I think, was done. I'm trying to remember. I know a lot of it was even colored. But I would just kind of... I would take out... This is the first time I would do it. I don't even think I knew my job title. I was just told to give notes. And I was like, okay. So I would go and I'd be like, okay, this page... Wow, this is really good. Okay, and then it would be like, then this page is only pencil. Then this page, I got to read a Chuck Dixon script. That was the first time I ever read a comic book script. And that's when I started going, oh, so that's what it looks like. And I started kind of modeling my own a little bit. But I would go through and I would give feedback. And then I'd send my notes to my boss. I didn't talk to Chuck directly, but I would talk to the publisher. And I would send my notes to
Who was the boss?
Tom Fenoglio. The Fenoglio brothers created Phenom Comics. And I would send my notes, and then I'd have like an hour or so long conversation on the phone with my boss, click, and then he'd look at my notes and he'd think about what he said, and then maybe we'd talk again. It's generally how I do it. I find in the creative process, that's why I wanted to make sure I had an artist that I could talk on the phone with, right? It's because I feel that there's a lot of miscommunication through text in the digital world. Even arguments can get started. Like someone will be like, "Why'd you say that?" I'm like, well, "Oh no, I said it in this tone." You know, like else, like what is that? Be like, "Oh, what is that?" No, I didn't say what is that. You know, like it's, you know. And so I always want to make sure that I can communicate with someone, because that was how I operate on that. And I thought that was great, and I wanted to communicate. Or at film school, I'd have my friends. A lot of my suite mates would work with me, so I'd be able to. We'd be editing a movie, and then my friend would be in the other room. He'd be like, "Hey, you want to take a look at this?" I'd sit right next to him and be like, oh yeah, maybe tighten that up, maybe whatever. And I'm like, I like just talking to people about the creative process. Or you hear about the Marvel office, how I think things are so digital now, sometimes I do wonder if it affects things. Because I do know that often they would go around the office and just be throwing ideas back and forth. So I think that there is a lot of nuance that gets lost when we don't really communicate like people. And I think sometimes it reflects in the art. But more so, I just like to communicate this way. But yeah, that's what I did on Hunter Ninja Bear. I basically gave notes, then they'd send me, come back to me whenever with the next batch, give my notes, call, and that's just kind of what my editing process was like. And it's what it's been like in every project I've worked on personally.
Well, how many have you worked on so far?
So I have a few that I'm working on. My friend actually, Zach, I believe he's on Joe Sontag's show right now. Actually, maybe is it right now or tomorrow? I don't know. I should probably pay better attention to that. But my friend Zach has a book out called VAUGHN. He's a friend who I met at Garden State Comic Fest. We went out drinking together, and then he was like, "Hey, I need someone to check over my stuff." I'm like, "Oh, that's what I do. It's my speciality." And he was like, "All right," and he hired me for that. So there we go. So that's one. I got my friend Jules has a book that I'm editing for. It's two. I edited a second book for Phenom called Star Riders that should be hopefully shipping soon. I know it did Indiegogo. I'm not sure if it's fully done. But that's my second Phenom book. So I edited Hunter Ninja Bear, Star Riders, Voyage, Scott Free, which is Jules' book. I'm trying to think if I edited. There's some others that there's some others that I was actually just at New York Comic Con. I was working at Michael Golden's table, and I was walking this one guy who I've met at a con. Was like, "Hey Vaughn, can I talk to you real quick?" He's like, "Listen, so I need an editor." I'm like, "All right, I'm your man." So I'm always getting new stuff, but those are the four right now. Only one of them has been published so far, but Star Riders should be out soon.
Nice, very nice. Look at you getting some stuff.
Yeah.
Under your
Resume's
hat.
getting bigger slowly, but eventually I'm hoping that people have. If they have even one book for me to sign, that's something. I'd love to eventually. I'm sure I'll regret saying this now, 20 years from now, but I would love to have people walk up with like stacks of books. Maybe 20 years later I might regret saying that.
Nah, you won't regret that.
I won't regret it. I don't think so. No. I don't think so. No. Especially if I charge them.
Well, hey, that's up to you. That's up to you.
Oh,
and if they pay it, it's up to them.
Yeah.
Golden Tree says, Vaughn, what stage of making the comic are you at?
So I've gotten the first couple pages penciled and inked. I just got some roughs today. I am at I think I have the first 8 pages penciled and inked. 9 and 10, I just got some roughs on, and they look beautiful. There were one part where I sent my artist my script, and I was doing too many obsessive revisions, and I go, oh, I might change some things, and then he sends me back a thumbnail. I spent a whole day revising my description of the description of this double page spread, and then by the time I'm done sending it, I'm looking at a thumbnail already waiting for me, and it's so much better than whatever I just wrote. And I was like, dude, I just spent 3 hours. Don't even look at what I wrote.
You're doing it wrong, Vaughn.
I learned that lesson.
As the writer, you're supposed to spend the least amount of time.
I've made quite a few mistakes.
I'm messing with you.
I know.
It happens, though. That happens. You'll work with someone really talented that, you spend, you put together this crazy, huge thing. And I don't do this anymore. I used to when I was making scripts that were more traditional and detailed. But you'll spend all this time kind of being elaborate with it, really descriptive, that kind of thing. Your little Alan Moore script that you're putting together, really, into it. And then the artist comes back and you're like, I should have just said, draw whatever this is and just give them 2 sentences. And then they would have just done something incredible anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of learning. My artist, he'll send me back stuff and I'm like, hey, what's this? Backtrack. It's good. It's really good. It's really good, actually, and I just need to stop talking. But,
Absolutely.
Sometimes
Yeah,
there
you
is
learn
the
that.
guiding hand that is needed. Sometimes I'm like, no, this is my vision, and I need it to be here. But
Rule the comic with an iron fist.
yeah. But like sometimes you gotta get, because if it's too rigid, you'll see it where it's like, I'm not giving them like 9-panel grid strictly every. And I'm not saying there's not a place for that. Sometimes there is. There are good comics like that.
Well, there's always going to be moments in the comic where you want a certain aspect of it to be played up, and maybe that got lost in translation to the artist. So you do have to go in there and require an edit or talk to them about it and the importance of the scene or whatever may be there, an emotion on the face of a character, that kind of thing, focusing on a certain aspect that's occurring. Spicer McLeroy coming back to give 10 memberships to people in the chat. Man, oh man, he's like the Santa Claus of comic book radio. Every show, almost, he comes along and just sprinkles 10 to 20 free memberships and is like, Merry Christmas. So Spicer McLeroy, thank you very much, buddy.
All right, let's see. How do I grab one of those? All right, whatever. I'll figure that out later. Let's give them to the fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Geeks Do says, any YouTube pages or sites you guys recommend to learn more about script layouts and writing in general? I don't have any off the top of my head as far as writing goes. For writing, my best recommendation, you can kind of pick up any book that talks about story structure, but because they're all gonna kind of repeat the same stuff. But I really recommend getting into reading about philosophy and psychology and history as well. And What Geeks Do, I know that you're well versed in a lot of different things. And the reason I say that is because you're able to bring those elements into creating characters that are more interesting. Because if you just keep reading books about writing, you'll notice that they all kind of say the same stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as YouTube channels and things like that, I'm not entirely sure. Vaughn, do you have any channels you can recommend in terms of writing?
I'm trying to think. In terms of YouTube channels.
This
So I
might
used
be
to
the
watch
best
a few.
one. That's all I know. That's all I could tell you.
It's a pretty good one. This one's pretty good. I do know one that I kind of go on for the second half of the show, Creative Block. It's one of those rotating shows, but it's Phil Diaz,
Oh, yeah. Narwhal,
Rini,
Rini.
and Hyper Wizard.
yeah.
They do a great show. I come on in the second half and then kind of ruin whatever good conversation they had. No, I'm kidding. But that's a good one. I would say I used to watch ones like Terrible Writing Advice, which would just basically poke fun at like bad writing, but in a way highlight good writing through that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. The worst part is I know I'm gonna think of like 5 as soon as I'm done answering this question and be like, that was a good
Yeah.
one. Because I do watch a lot, but I'm kind of blanking at the moment. I've been so deep in the process that I almost haven't been watching as many as I used to. I would say listening to interviews with your favorite creators is pretty good, but often they're just talking about the finished project.
Yeah, not really
know,
the nuts
not
and
really,
bolts
yeah.
process kind of stuff. Yeah, and I try
Especially
to
if it's
have...
a fanboy interview,
Yeah, I try to have a lot of those kinds of talks on here. I mean, What Geeks Do, I don't want to just toot my own horn about it, but this channel has been one of the only type of channels that I've seen that we go into the nuts and bolts. And of course, you got to watch a lot of different interviews and you'll pick up on certain ones where we're discussing the nitty gritty. But as far as getting into it, I mean, it's difficult. I can't take one off the top of my head and say go to it and that's a good one. But yeah, best of luck to you. Search around. It's fun to search and see what's out there. So we're coming upon the hour. We got 5 minutes until the hour. We got to talk about UFOs.
Aliens. Oh,
we
absolutely.
got to do it.
We got to do it. It's important.
Yeah, it is.
It's my moral obligation.
It's very important.
I think
and
that's how I got on the show, actually, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, you had tweeted about it was a response to those Peruvian mummies that they had shown in Mexico.
Which what happened with that? By
And
the way?
yeah, it had like nothing happened to it.
That's
really.
what I thought.
And then the one of them that looks that went everywhere. The little one that looks just like a sculpture kind of a thing, And then the other one that really didn't get too much airplay. It looks like a mummy with an elongated skull. Was larger. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't finish that whole story. I forget what happened right around the time, but I got so busy. It's almost like there's something. No, but I got to look into that one more.
Yeah, that one was interesting because they just kind of brought it out of nowhere, and there's so many more questions that it brought up that like no one was asking about, because it's like, if you have these mummified alien bodies, how'd they get here? What else is there that was, what's the context of this? Where were they found exactly? When were they found? Even how long have they been in storage? I guess you could say, because they bring them out in like these air sealed cases. And the Paracas skull. Yeah, the Paracas skulls had DNA taken a few years back. So when it was being treated like it was relatively new, I thought that was really strange. Because I'm seeing, just like we're seeing right now in entertainment, in comics, in movies, we're seeing this occur everywhere else. And the paranormal, UFO, whatever you want to call it, field is seeing it too, where it's kind of an erasure of what's occurred.
Right.
It's like they didn't, even NASA came out a few weeks ago or maybe a month ago talking about how they don't have any good evidence for anything. There's nothing they could really base anything on to draw any kind of conclusion about it. Acting as if like 80 years or so of history and documents, like thousands upon thousands of pages of documents reported from military officials, people in the government, citizens, etc., is just not good enough.
Yeah,
we need better evidence.
The thing is, you ask most people, I have had, and they think I'm like a nut. I've had so many people be like, "What are you talking about? There is evidence," and I'll be cite things like, "Yeah, okay." I'm like, "You want to look into it?" No. Like there's always so much. There's like so much documentation. There's so much crazy stuff that goes out there, and then they'll be like, well, why aren't there like HD pictures? And it's more complicated than that. It's okay. Why aren't there HD pictures of every famous murder scene, if we're gonna go by that logic? Okay, you don't need. There's other ways to prove things. Oh my god! But the alien stuff is so fast. I've always been a believer in that too. I mean, to be fair, I've always wanted to, but I do believe it. Especially, there's so many crazy stories, and there's always more to look into. But
yeah, I mean, there's mountains and mountains of evidence of stuff that's occurred, not just in the United States, but all throughout the world, and for a very, very, very long time. And it's just, people go to like Roswell and things like that, but there's all kinds of different things that even occurred within the year of 47 with the Roswell crash that was very suspicious. And then you get
really?
a lot of stuff that's, yeah. So you get the Kenneth Arnold sighting, and you get a couple other things that occurred in the year of 1947. And there's all kinds of other things that have occurred all over the world that are like Roswell in terms of crash retrieval and UFO report and very strange occurrences. And it's interesting. If it's a big nothing, man, they're putting a lot of time and money and resources into all of it. And then if it's a big something, they are putting a lot of time, money, and resources into covering it all up.
yeah,
And
either way, a lot of wasted money and time.
Yeah, and no matter what, either way, all roads lead to they're lying about something.
Yeah.
There's some kind of misdirection that's occurring, whether it's fake and is a complete misdirection, or whether it's legitimate and it's a complete denial.
100%.
So just going down that road alone is like, well, how the hell can you actually trust most of the stuff
once
that
they're
not
proven
just our
about
government,
lying.
but the global government is talking about all the time?
Yeah, once they've been proven to lie about one thing, you can kind of go, okay, well, what else are they lying about? Oh, well, nothing. Oh, why? Did they tell you they're lying about nothing? Well, we already know what their word means. It's really, I mean, like you said, there's tons. They literally have procedures for dealing with UFOs, very thorough procedures. Well, there must be precedent, right? Like if I make a procedure for something, you better believe there's a reason, especially if they're going to spend all this money and all this time and putting it on all these documents and training people to deal with it.
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason. And, why would these people with respectable military careers come out and talk about things that most people would say they're crazy for?
Yeah, and then if they're part of the misinformation or disinformation campaign, again, that is something to be concerned about as well. So it's one of those things where no matter what your opinion of it is, all roads lead to something weird is going on. There's some kind of cover-up that's occurring. There's some kind of secrecy. There's a lot of money being put into it. A lot of money. And this is taxpayer money.
Yeah.
So even on that, wars that are getting started or being prolonged, and all under the name of a lot of it misdirection from things that are occurring. So even if the whole entire UFO thing is basically just a big op to cover up advanced technologies within the military, that's a big deal too.
Yeah, it's no matter what, there's nothing to snooze about. Like no matter what, there is still, even if people are like even people who are like, well, what if there's interdimensional beings? That's still a
Well, I mean, just the fact that the government put in a lot of time and effort during the Cold War to investigate into the prospect of remote viewing and utilizing remote viewers on both sides. The Soviets and even the Chinese were doing remote viewing research. But the Soviets and the U.S. using remote viewers to essentially spy on each other. And then that program got declassified in 95. Because it was, well, the Cold War's over. And it was like, why? Because they kind of found out everything they could find out from each other at that point. So it's one of those, it's a crazy thing to think about, to have the realization of, and we all have to do, at the end of the month, rent is still due. At the end of the week, you still got to do your laundry, and you got to go grocery shopping, and you got to live life. You got to go to your job, So there's all these things where, of course, they could come out and say this, that, and whatever, but you still got to live life. So I think a lot of people, it's easier to kind of put this stuff out of their mind, and whatever comes of it comes of it. And I get that, because at the end of the day, what can you really do other than kind of have wishful thinking that one day the world will change, it'll be a better place or a more open place or whatever. But it's interesting at the very least. I find it so interesting. It's odd to me when people don't find it interesting at all. I find that odd.
I do. I find that the weirdest stance. Like the weirdest. And I have a lot of friends who have the indifference. Oh, God, Vaughn, you're talking about aliens again? Yes. It's cool and interesting. And it says a lot about a lot of different things. There's something crazy going on no matter what. Listen, the government lying to us and spending millions of dollars inherently is going to be crazy.
Trillions.
No matter what it is. Trillions. Trillions, I'm sorry. Trillions. There's either way, that's your money, dude. Like, don't you care where it's being spent? If you think UFOs are crazy and a waste of time, then shouldn't you be outraged that they're spending trillions?
Yeah, on make 'em up crazy things,
Yeah, so either way, there's all roads lead to investigating it.
Yeah. That is something, it ain't kosher. Something's going wrong. Johnny B. Casual, we'll take a little tangent into this conversation. It says, what are your thoughts on AI-generated comics?
I would never buy one personally. I don't see the appeal. I've seen AI art. I'm not super impressed. I can always tell when it's AI art.
Just looks like a decent video game. Looks like a pretty good, decent video game.
Then I'll play a pretty decent video game. No thanks to
exactly.
AI comic book. It's kind of like no one's favorite video game cutscenes are the AI generated ones. Where they're like standing, yes, we must go this, and then it's the model. That's never anyone's favorite.
Yeah.
There's never a great performance or a great visual. Like there's cutscenes where you could tell the budget went. That's where you could tell humans worked on it. That's what people like. I'm not personally. I understand why people are freaking out by AI. I think there's reason to it, but I also I personally just don't really see the appeal.
Yeah, I think honestly a larger thing to go back and to tie it to the UFO stuff and also conspiracy theories in general. I think we're seeing a lot of this stuff put out there to kind of scatter the ability of being able to tell what's a legitimate thing and what isn't.
Yeah.
And being able to have it done on a level and make it so accessible to people to put this kind of stuff out. I mean, we've seen it already happening constantly within the mainstream news media where they'll jump to report on something and misreport it, and they don't care. It doesn't matter if it even could start World War III. It's like, oh, well, we wanted to get that story because it's all about who gets to that story
Oh
first
my
and makes
God,
money
yeah.
off of it. And if they can make money off of a story, they'll make the story. So if you get AI involved to craft all that kind of imagery for you and you know, get deep fakes and everything else involved, and it becomes more and more commonplace, more and more difficult to tell fact from fiction on that level. Now you can see video all the time of things and go, I don't know if I trust that, because it's so advanced now, the tech, where you could be watching a video, something that would have completely, I mean, people were losing their minds over the War World radio broadcast back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, but now if you showed them a very convincing video footage that was occurring, they'd be like, holy crap. But now it's turned into, I don't know if I could trust that. So now you can't even trust what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what's around you. And then eventually if they get to the point where they've got that technology that people talk about with that Project Bluebeam thing with the holographic imagery and things like that, then you can actually see things with your own eye without a screen and go, I don't know, is that real? I don't know.
Project Bluebeam, is that the one where I'm seeing the soda cans and stuff projected in the sky? Or what's Project Bluebeam?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. They're having fun with it right now.
Well, they might. Yeah, and you're saying they might use it for nefarious.
But you could absolutely use it for a nefarious case. So it's that kind of thing where it muddies the water in terms of what's real. But right now it seems like it's just people making some fun stuff, you know. And we'll see if it turns into, because my worries about it being an AI dominated field within entertainment and comics is it's honestly the least of my worries. But I don't know how you feel about it. To me, it's like human being. I'm not going to purposely hire someone to make AI art or buy it.
Right.
But
what you said is a compelling case that people want something there. It's not like, it's almost like the deadline things, right? People want, or like, look at how many. None of my favorite YouTube videos, generally speaking, I guess there could be some exceptions, but like, no disrespect, but like, there's like often the YouTubers that will take like a month or a week, where then there's just the daily, you know, getting it out. And I think oftentimes what gets the better numbers is generally getting it out fast. People want this immediacy, and it might not have the best shelf life. You know, a video could be, and the same thing is true of news stories, right? You don't want the most thorough documentation of the event that just happened today. That'll come later when you're doing a documentary. And so I think for that reason, that might be a good reason why people would use and buy AI, and that is certainly something to think about. Because I'm thinking about it as a creator and as a serious fan, but I'm not one of those. A lot of people walk in, buy something, then they don't.
To me, the bottom line too is whatever happens, we have no control over it. So what occurs?
It's a pill.
And it's something that people have to really deal with that and accept that. And the only control that we have over this entire scenario is, do you choose to fund it or not? And if you're someone who's gonna fund it, you're not gonna convince someone otherwise. If someone's like, I don't care, the visual is the visual, that's all that matters to me. I don't care if it's a computer that makes it through prompts. I don't care if it's an artist that made it through mastery of the craft or whatever. I don't care. If it looks nice, it looks nice. If it sounds good, it sounds good. They don't care. And then you got the other side of the argument where people that would feel the opposite way completely and go, I'll never purchase that knowingly, especially. And I want to support the stuff that human beings are creating, because to me, that's what defines what is art. And there's, people that are putting something into it and all that kind of stuff. It's a difference between even feeling like, you ever be around like an original, traditional made piece of art?
Oh yeah, I have a Michael Golden one that I got this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel it, if you see it, whatever it may be. There's a very different feel
100%.
to it.
I mean, even AI, I remember seeing people ripping apart this one on Twitter where it's like, what is the creative process by this? And you just see it's just like lines. There's no like reason for it. Like when you look, even when you break down, there's like the pencil pages behind the. I'm just grabbing this because it was like the first one here. Where is it? They would have. I thought they had the pencil pages. Am I insane? All right. Well, the point is, you look at the penciled stuff, or even the roughs, and you could just see the humanity in it. Even down to sometimes you could be like, ugh, that person was on a deadline. But the point is, I think people like seeing the creative process. Even though they like seeing the finished environment, we like seeing that kind of natural passion. And I think you're going to lose that with AI. You also will lose that communication. Again, there have been ideas that my artists or even friends have come up with that if I was just dictating to AI, would never have come about. Or or even if I was just dictating to an artist that I didn't have a conversation with. And so I think we'll lose that. But again, the question is to the general consumer who doesn't think about it. Do they think about it? Well, are we over assuming that they don't think about it? I don't know.
And I think honestly, as human beings, we only lose what we want to lose, what we let be lost. So if we don't want traditional art to be lost, if we don't want human being made artwork or movies or music or whatever it may be, if we don't want any of that to be lost, then we won't let it be lost. People will continue to do it, and even if it becomes something that seems like it's a futile effort, because it will seem at first like it's a futile effort, because you're going to see people put out stuff and you're like, man, what? Like, I don't think I could be that good. I got to take, years and years and years to make something as good as what this AI thing could do. But there's going to be people that go, it's worth it. That's worth doing that. It's worth establishing some sense of creativity in your life and building on a craft and all that other kind of stuff. But yes, for me, the AI conversation, it really is like it's inevitable. It's going to be here. It is here. It's not going anywhere. The toothpaste is out of the tube.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah. But it's like, how do we now deal with that as people who maybe don't want that to become a prevalent thing, or we don't want to utilize it, or however it is? The key is just keep on putting stuff out there and do it the way you want to do it. Tell the stories you want to tell, and hopefully people respond to it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. The problem comes from that AI takes from people's things, but again, they can't take the human ingenuity. They can take the brain waves that are behind it, or their unique reasons for why I wrote what I wrote, or what I was feeling at the time. I don't think AI can replicate that.
Yeah. And it's going to be, if it ever does, we have a lot more to worry about than comic books.
Yeah, that's a good point. We think about it, that's the problem, is we get this tunnel vision, right? When we're creating something, when we're working. And I think that's what people rely on, people who are manipulating things, is that we got to make this deadline. Oh my God, I got to promote on here. I got to revise this script. You're so hesitant that it's like, yep, we could just walk right over your head. And they won't even know. And we won't, because our heads are in the sand.
Yeah.
Or at our desks.
Well, the funny part, too, for me is this other part, right? Okay, so now economically, if you want to talk about it like that, people go, oh, well, it'll enable people to do this or do that, and you make more, and everything is better. Technology advances, people make more money, and everything is great. The more we've seen technology advance, how many people are currently constantly complaining about the economy and how things keep getting worse, apparently. We have lots of technology, more than 100-something years ago, but things keep seemingly getting worse. Now, the thing is with the AI, when they create that art for the person, right? So the human being essentially using the computer program to create it for them. Almost like, you have a free slave out of it, a free digital slave. So now you're going to are they going to purchase that art? Is the AI going to purchase art from you, or are you expecting other human beings to purchase the art from you? And then based on what jobs, what skills, what kind of thing do they have? It becomes a really weird, slippery slope. And all roads, to me, lead back to government universal basic income. So it's a weird thing. But it's that kind of thing where, haven't we read enough stories? Aren't we already aware of where these kinds of roads lead? Do we have to live them and then have some kind of a revolution before we realize like this is
I think
this
the
is a
problem
very
is
slippery slope?
the answer we want to say is no, we don't have to. But sometimes maybe we maybe we do, to because maybe people will just be like, yeah, that is scary. Anyway,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
kind of like, okay, well, whatever, you know.
and then it's like, wait, this is a problem. Because I don't know what steps I'm taking in my daily life to
Yeah.
prevent this.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
I'll say it's a problem.
Exactly. And we could talk about, okay, well, that's a fear mongering approach, but I want to say then in reference how many different things have occurred where we thought like, oh, well, that would be fear mongering if that, but then they occurred in exactly the same kind of fashion that it played out, and it was a bad thing that had occurred.
Yeah,
It's like there's
sometimes
no going
fear-
back once
fear-
that happens.
Fear exists for a reason, right? We have defensive instincts for a reason. We have
Yeah, well, it's one thing to have irrational fear.
right,
And
paranoia.
then and make connections that don't exist whatsoever. But there's another thing to go, okay, well then if this and this and then this, and you can kind of play out how would that occur. And you're not having AI really be a ground level thing. It's not like it's this decentralized, completely ground level thing. AI is being incorporated throughout every top level corporation all over the place. Every government, every top level corporation. All the people who already control way more than they should control are going to fully utilize AI in every aspect that they possibly can. So the fact that people are like leaning more and more to being comfortable with certain things, we should be getting away from as much as that as possible. But again, it's inevitable. It's already here. And the only thing we could do if we don't want to see it completely take over would just be to be more creative as people and get good.
Be less comfortable too. Be willing to thrive in the slight discomfort of not.
Yeah.
Because I do that all the time. I give access to passwords maybe I shouldn't, or whatever. Because it's like, do I really want to take that extra minute to go through and dig through? And the truth is we give little bits of ourselves all the time for convenience. And sometimes it leads to more time in the day, and we know how precious that is. Time is the most valuable resource. But
it's an interesting conversation. Yeah, it really is.
Oh, 100%. And
Hopefully
it's always
we'll,
going to be ongoing.
Exactly. And hopefully we'll always be allowed to have such a conversation.
I
And
hope
not
so.
that one day, 5 years or something from now, the AI algorithm detects that we're talking bad about it
Yeah.
and cuts the feed.
Their feelings are hurt.
And then the AI police systems come in here, which they
yeah.
are building, which is frightening as well.
What?
Because really? Yeah, oh yeah, man. Yeah, there's
AI-generated conversations, that would be wild.
right. Yeah. Well,
Have you seen AI-generated? My friend once sent me, was like, what do you think of this AI-generated Batman script? It was horrible, but it was like... it was like, yes, Alfred, we go to Batcave, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it's weird. It's like we're programming our replacements, and I don't mean us in particular, but human beings are the ones that need to program this stuff first and foremost. And need to utilize it.
Sorry.
Bless you. And need to fully. Oh yeah, I've been there. And you need to fully create these systems. So human beings need to go in there and create something that's going to essentially be replacing themselves, which I find fascinating. That human beings are always kind of hell-bent on self-extinction in
Yep.
some weird way.
Terminator is very much ahead of the time.
Exactly, Johnny B. Casual. I'm a confirmed AI down the rabbit hole. Exactly. Yeah, I talked about this the other day, that it's kind of like we're messing with dimensionality here, because for some people, all will ever exist to them is within this space, this screen, and that's it. They don't know you outside of that existence. So it's almost like you're a being that exists outside of the dimensionality that they're aware of.
Right.
And then to other people, you get outside of this space and see them and interact, and it's like, oh, they're more real. So it's interesting. It creates some nice stories at the very least.
Well, I think that's true. I think there's a reason, like, why, for example, I love going to cons so much, or why we love hearing, oh, do you know this person in real life? What are they like outside of it? I think there's a reason, is because we want that humanity deep down. We like the convenience AI provides, but I think deep down what we really want in our core, and I think a lot of people will realize this, is we want that experience. And that's one of the things, I think another thing that drew me to comics so much was I can just go and talk to these people whose works I've read, and like you can kind of do that but Hollywood it's not as accessible, right? I can go and I can, and I think that kind of relates to it, because it's like that human element is something we always crave in everything. Yeah. Even in our escapism, there's a human element we want. Even when we're lost in another world, we want something familiar, even if we don't realize it.
Absolutely, yeah. Throughout time, even, you can see that within storytelling. Because if you couldn't relate to anything whatsoever, to what the human experience would be like for someone, you couldn't relate to anything from 2,000, 3,000 years ago, whatever it may be. All that stuff would just be like, it doesn't speak to me at all. This is it's like an alien concept. But instead that stuff survives time, and it's
that's
storytelling that helps that to bridge the gap.
Which is why it drives me insane when it's like we need to update things for modern times. It's like humanity has been around for like this long. Like, it's a good story is a good story, and there are human elements like everywhere and everything.
And Johnny B. Casual, thank you for the 10. Says, you guys are fun. Stay weird. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. Have no plans of changing. Got my I spent too much time in this nerd hobby to go anywhere else.
Exactly. Well, if we can't explore different possibilities and come up with different outcomes for different scenarios, then we wouldn't be much of a storyteller, would we?
No,
right?
We're not.
Yeah. Alex says, White Lightning is the best self-insert character I've ever seen.
No, alright, so my character hasn't been colored yet. I've made it very clear that Lightning is supposed to be yellow, but my character is white, and I'm very white, and so they've insisted on calling the character White Lightning.
That's already done. You don't want to go that route.
I don't want to go that. No, they know that.
Oh, okay.
They know that, and they know that I don't like that. So naturally, they're like, oh, let's call it. Another thing, too, was I had to go back to the drawing board for our superhero names. Which is fitting, I guess, because the main character is a kid and he's going through his superhero names. But I might have to go back to the drawing board, because I think I said the superhero name on air, and then the people on my panel started laughing. So I'm like, okay, I guess I need a new name.
Was the name White Lightning?
No, it was Lord Lightning, which I thought was cool, though. But the panel disagreed with me. So
interesting. Well, hey.
So I was like, that's got to go. But it's okay. I mean, I already have backups, so I'll reveal them in time.
Good for you. Yeah. Take your time with it.
Yeah.
And every now and then searching for, type it in, character name, and then comic book, or whatever.
I did that. Help. Lightning Lord was taken, but I was like...
Oh, yeah, so yeah, you flip, yeah. Well, AL says all the good superhero names have been taken.
I noticed that
I like King Cryptid. I like mine.
That one's really good. See, I have a massive list of superhero names, including bad ones, because I'm ever like, yeah, this character would be like a joke one to kill off. But, I do have good ones, too. But I write down every name I come up with, even the most horrendous ones. Because I'm like, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, just writing them down even helps to get it out there. And then you can mess around with it a bit. Looking up even scientific terms for lightning or various things, atomically.
Right.
But yeah, you never know. You never know. Vitrification, whatever. Vitrification for a superhero. Vitrify. Yeah, you never know. Horrendous names can be used in a comedy ash can later. There you go. But man, oh man.
Vitrify. I don't think I know that word.
Yeah, vitrification. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I knew every lightning.
That's
alien word.
not like necessarily a result of lightning, but sometimes lightning can vitrify stone, sand, or whatever, create glass. It's like superheated.
Okay.
You know, yeah. Like
Voltaic.
voltaic.
Yeah, he said Alex sent
vengeance.
me a huge list after that stream. He was like, "Here, so you don't feel bad." He like gave me a massive list. Alex is good people. He's good
Yeah.
people.
Yeah,
The
he's a good
horrendous
dude.
names. Yeah, I don't know how he managed. He's in every chat. He's like the first backer on every campaign. It's nuts.
He's good. He's quick. He's lightning fast.
Yeah, he is. Alex VRB. I'll just call the character that.
But Vaughn,
Okay.
thank you so much for being on here tonight,
It's my
man.
pleasure.
Really
Thank you so much for
appreciate it.
having me.
Yeah, look at that. Alex says he's got vitrified sand right there. Not a joke. Yeah, yeah. It's funky. Look it up. It's really cool.
All right, I will look that up. That's
Yeah.
one of the first things I'll do.
Everybody, thank you guys for being here tonight. Really appreciate you all in the chat. And Vaughn, again, thank you, man, for spending some time here talking about comics, talking about UFOs, all this good stuff.
Yeah, no, it was a great conversation. Thank you. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on. Really means a lot.
No problem. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Everybody, go check out Vaughn's channel. I've got that link in the description. And before we go, where can they find you? And yeah.
Yeah, so my socials, really, if you look up my name, it should be here. Like, my Twitter is Vaughn M. Coleman. Vaughn Coleman on Instagram, Vaughn Coleman on YouTube. I like to keep it kind of simple. My sign-up list for Living Legends, I should have a link tree. Once you find it on one of my socials, that gives you access to everything I got, basically. I like to keep it pretty accessible. Yeah, that's where you can find me. Just, again, my name, you'll be able to find everything you need for that. So,
All right, very good. So I will not be back here tomorrow night, guys. I'm going to be over on the Madness Comic Network at 9 o'clock Eastern, talking about King Cryptid and They Live. They want to talk They Live tomorrow night, so that's fine by me.
that's similar to our conversations, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Great movie. And then Friday night, I'll be back here with Drunk 3PO, Jay. He's going to be back here with me at 9 o'clock Eastern. And then Saturday, I'm going to be over on Marsh Makes Comics on his channel, talking King Cryptid and making comics and whatnot. And then Sunday, I'll be back here again with that Robert Clotworthy show, the voice of Ancient Aliens. So that's going to be fun,
That's
talking
awesome.
to him.
And that's going to be on this channel?
That'll be on this channel.
All
yeah.
right, I'll have to check that out. Looking forward to it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gonna be good. Gonna be good. He's a cool dude too. He's excited about it.
That's awesome.
But everybody, thank you guys so much. Take it easy. I will see you soon. And if I don't, have a great night and an even better tomorrow. See you guys.
See you.